They buried his name in blood, certain he would never return. But Rafael DeLuca did. And this time, he came to claim the woman who had no idea she was already his. Hi guys, I need you to please subscribe to help this channel grow. Thank you. The smell of fresh bread clung to Serafina Rossetti's clothes as she locked up the bakery for the night. The street was dim, the kind of dim where shadows seem to breathe. She pulled her cardigan tighter, the day's exhaustion heavy in her bones, her hair tied back in a loose knot. Her life was small, predictable, and safe. She liked it that way. But safety ended the moment she noticed a black car parked across the street. It hadn't been there when she opened that morning. Its tinted windows reflected only the glow of the street lamps. Serafina hesitated, keys still in her hand. Something in her chest fluttered. Fear, intuition, she didn't know. She walked faster, head down, praying it was nothing. The car door opened. Her breath caught. A man stepped out, tall, deliberate, dressed in dark wool that whispered wealth without a single flashy detail. He didn't glance around. His eyes found her immediately, sharp, assessing, like he had known where she would be all along. Serafina froze, as if the air itself tightened. Serafina Rossetti. His voice rolled out low, certain. She flinched. Do I know you? He took a step forward. The streetlight carved shadows across his jaw, highlighting the scar that traced from his temple to his cheekbone. Not ugly, not disfiguring, just a mark of survival, the kind that warned you this was not a man who lost battles. No, he said, though the way he said it made her feel like a lie was hidden underneath. But I know you. Her heart hammered. She had heard that tone before, in stories old men muttered at the cafe when they thought no one was listening. A name would surface in those whispers, a ghost that carried more weight than truth. Rafael DeLuca. The man who vanished years ago after the city bled too much. It couldn't be him. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, Serafina said, clutching her bag to her side, willing her feet to move. But he closed the distance without rush, as though her panic was irrelevant. When he stood before her, the world seemed too quiet, like even the wind was waiting. You bake bread for the morning crowd. You sing when you think no one hears. You live small because you think small keeps you safe. His eyes locked on hers. But Serafina, you belong to me, and I've come back to collect. Her pulse stuttered, the key slipping from her hand to the ground. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was insane, but the intensity in his gaze made words die in her throat. You don't even know me, she whispered. A ghost of a smile tugged at his lips, not gentle, not soft, possessive. I've known you longer than you think. Your father owed me, and debts don't vanish, no matter how many years pass. You are the payment. Her blood went cold. Her father? He had died years ago. He had never been more than a simple man, hard-working, quiet. What debt could a man like her father owe to someone like Rafael DeLuca? You're wrong, she snapped, fear pushing her into defiance. I'm not part of whatever game you're playing. He leaned closer, the scent of smoke and leather surrounding her, his voice low enough to curl against her skin. This isn't a game, Serafina. This city knows I keep what's mine. And now, so will you. She stumbled back, but his hand shot out, catching her wrist, not harshly, but firmly enough to remind her she wasn't going anywhere. His grip was warm, unyielding, and terrifying. I'm giving you a choice, he said, though his tone carried no choice at all. Walk away from this street with me now, or watch the life you've built crumble before sunrise. Tears burned her eyes, frustration mixing with panic. She had struggled for every inch of the life she had now. The bakery, the small apartment above it, the sense of independence, it was all hers. And now this man, this ghost from the city's darkest history, threatened to rip it all away like it was nothing. What do you want from me? Her voice cracked. He studied her for a moment, as if weighing her very soul in silence. Then, softly, almost like a vow, he said everything. The night swallowed her gasp. Raphael released her wrist, but didn't step back. Instead, he gestured toward the car, his presence impossible to ignore. Serafina's instinct screamed at her to run, but the heaviness in his words pinned her in place. Tomorrow, he said, Voice final. You'll see what happens when you say no to me. And with that, he walked back to the car, leaving her standing on the darkened street, shaking, the sound of the engine haunting her as it faded into the night. Serafina pressed her hand to her chest, heart racing. She told herself it was just a threat, just intimidation, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. Whoever Rafael DeLuca was, he wasn't a man who made empty promises. By the time she made it upstairs to her small apartment, locking the door behind her, she was trembling too much to even remove her shoes. The city outside seemed suddenly hostile, unfamiliar. She slid to the floor, whispering to herself over and over, "He's wrong. He has to be wrong." But somewhere, in the deepest part of her gut, she knew her quiet life was over. Because Rafael DeLuca had returned. And he had returned for her. The city woke before Serafina did. She was up at dawn, the way she always was, but this morning her hands trembled as she shaped the dough, her mind replaying the night before in sharp flashes. The way his voice filled the silence. The way he looked at her as if she were already his. She tried to shake it off, bury herself in work, convincing herself it was nothing but intimidation. Men like him fed on fear. She wouldn't give him that. But when she opened the bakery door, her chest caved in. Across the street, the same black car waited. Not moving, not leaving, watching. Serafina's throat tightened. The customers who trickled in seemed unaware, too caught up in their chatter and morning coffee. But she felt it, the weight of those eyes on her, the reminder of his words. Tomorrow, you'll see. By mid-morning, the bakery was full, the air thick with the smell of cinnamon and butter. Children laughed. An old woman scolded her husband for eating too many pastries. It was normal, comforting, and Serafina clung to it like a shield. Then the front door opened. The sound of laughter died. Conversations cut short. A chill swept through the room, as if the air itself recognized who had arrived. Rafael DeLuca stepped inside. He didn't belong here. The bakery was warmth, sunlight, safety. He was cold steel and shadows, his presence pulling every ounce of joy out of the room. He didn't look around. He didn't need to. His eyes found her instantly, and Serafina felt her heartbeat slam against her ribs. Her hands clenched the counter. "You can't just." "Close early," he said, his voice carrying over the silence. A murmur rippled through the customers. Serafina shook her head, panic rising. "I can't do that. These people." But he cut her off with one glance, sharp as a blade. It wasn't loud, wasn't shouted, but the effect was immediate. Chairs scraped, hushed apologies filled the air, and within seconds the bakery was empty. Every customer slipped out the door without a word, without even daring to meet her eyes. The bell above the door chimed one last time, and then it was just him. Her sanctuary felt like a trap. "What do you want from me?" Serafina whispered. He leaned against the counter as though he owned it, his posture relaxed, but his presence anything but. "I told you last night. Everything. That's not an answer." He tilted his head, studying her. "Your father owed me his loyalty. When he couldn't give it, he gave me something else." His eyes darkened. "A promise." Her stomach turned. "My father was a good man. He would never." "You think you know who your father was?" Raphael's voice was low, cutting. "You think he lived a clean life, raising you with flour on his hands and stories in his mouth. But that was a lie. Your father stood in this city's shadows long before you learned to walk." Serafina shook her head, stepping back. "You're lying. You're trying to scare me." His gaze held hers with terrifying steadiness. "I don't need to scare you, Serafina. I only need to tell you the truth." Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream at him, to demand proof, but something in his eyes told her he believed every word he spoke. And that was worse than any threat. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why not money, property, anything else?" A faint smile curved his lips, dark and possessive. "Because money fades, property burns. But you..." His eyes swept over her, deliberate, unapologetic. "You last. You were promised to me, and I don't leave promises unkept." The room spun. She grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. "You can't just walk back into my life and decide I belong to you. I'm not something to be collected." Raphael stepped closer. Every instinct in her screamed to run, but her feet betrayed her. His shadow fell across her, his presence overwhelming. "You already are," he murmured. The words sank into her skin like fire, both terrifying and magnetic. Her chest rose and fell too quickly, her heart out of control. Then, as if the tension weren't enough, the sound of shattering glass erupted from the back. Serafina gasped, spinning around. The rear window lay in shards, the curtain whipping in the breeze. "Stay here," Raphael ordered. But she grabbed his arm before she realized what she was doing. "No, what if it's—" His gaze dropped to her hand on him, and for a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, something else. Then it was gone, replaced by the sharpness that defined him. "You don't question me, Serafina." He peeled her fingers off gently but firmly. Then he moved, silent and precise, disappearing toward the back like a predator. Serafina's pulse thundered in her ears as she stood frozen. Minutes stretched unbearably long. Finally, Raphael returned, his expression unreadable. "Someone's watching you," he said. Her stomach dropped. "What?" "Your bakery isn't safe anymore." His tone was matter-of-fact, not dramatic. "They know I've claimed you, and now they'll come for you to get to me." She stared at him, every word heavier than the last. Claimed. Safe. Not safe. The words didn't make sense, didn't fit together. She was just a baker. Just Serafina. She had no enemies. She had no part in his world. "You're insane," she whispered. "This has nothing to do with me." His eyes locked on hers, sharp and relentless. "It has everything to do with you. You're mine, and now the whole city knows it." Serafina's knees threatened to give way, her breath coming too fast. She had fought for a small life, a quiet life, believing it would keep her safe. But with one man's return, everything she built was unraveling. And worst of all, deep inside, beneath the fear, was a pull she couldn't explain. A part of her that wasn't entirely horrified by the way Raphael DeLuca looked at her. A part of her that was terrified not of him, but of herself. Serafina didn't sleep. She lay awake in her narrow bed above the bakery, every sound outside making her flinch. The city that once soothed her now felt like a monster breathing at her window. Raphael's words repeated over and over. "You're mine. The whole city knows it." She couldn't accept it. She wouldn't. By morning, her decision was made. She would run, leave everything behind if she had to. The bakery, the apartment, the small life she had fought for. It hurt, but staying meant surrender. And Serafina Rossetti didn't belong to anyone. She packed quickly, stuffing a change of clothes and her savings into a worn satchel. She scribbled a note to her neighbor, old Mrs. Mancini, telling her she'd gone to visit relatives. It was a lie, but lies were better than questions. By the time the sun rose, she slipped out the back door, her heart pounding as though the city itself might catch her. She didn't dare take her usual route. She avoided main streets, sticking to alleys, weaving through crowds at the market. Each step felt like stolen time, but the car was still there, parked at the end of the street, its black frame gleaming in the early light. Her pulse spiked. She turned away quickly, ducking into the bustle of vendors. If she could just reach the train station, she could be gone by noon. She didn't know where she'd go, anywhere that wasn't here, anywhere that wasn't under his shadow. She pushed faster, weaving through bodies, clutching her satchel so tightly her knuckles whitened. The sound of her own breath drowned out the noise around her. Then a hand closed over her arm. She spun, heart in her throat, only to see Marco, the grocer's boy, looking at her with confusion. "Miss Rossetti, you dropped this." He held out a loaf of bread she hadn't realized slipped from her bag. She exhaled shakily, thanking him, forcing a smile as she took it back. She moved quickly, afraid even this small pause had cost her. But by the time she reached the edge of the market, her escape collapsed. Two men stood in the shadow of a stall, suits too sharp, eyes too alert. Not Raphael. No, these men weren't his. She knew by the way they looked at her, like she was prey they'd already been paid to claim. One of them smiled thinly. Rossetti. Her blood ran cold. She turned on her heel, shoving into the crowd. Shouts rang out behind her. Panic surged. She ran, her satchel banging against her side, weaving through startled shoppers, ignoring the curses that followed. Footsteps pounded after her. She didn't look back. She couldn't. She tore through the maze of streets, lungs burning, vision blurring. Every corner felt like a trap, every face another stranger who might sell her out. And then, just as her legs threatened to give way, a black car screeched around the corner ahead of her. Her heart stopped. The door flew open. Raphael stepped out. There was no rush in his stride as he walked toward her. No panic in his eyes. Just cold certainty, as if he had known all along she would try to run, as if this moment were inevitable. The men chasing her skidded to a stop, their expressions shifting from confidence to dread. One muttered a curse under his breath. The other began to retreat. Raphael didn't even look at them. His gaze stayed on her, sharp and unyielding. "You thought you could escape me." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the chaos like a blade. "Let me go," she choked out, chest heaving. "I don't want this. I don't want you." Finally, he turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the two men. His hand lifted lazily, like swatting away insects. "Run," he said. They didn't hesitate. The men scattered, disappearing down alleys, their footsteps swallowed by the city. Raphael turned back to her, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak, just studied her with those dark, impossible eyes. Tears burned her eyes, rage sparking beneath the fear. "You can't control me. You can't own me." A flicker of something, was it amusement? Frustration? Passed over his face. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, the scent of leather and smoke clinging to him. "You're already mine," he murmured. "And if you run again, Serafina, I won't chase you. I'll destroy everything you leave behind instead." Her breath caught, horror flooding her chest. He meant the bakery, her neighbors, Mrs. Mancini, the little world she'd built piece by piece. He would ruin it all without hesitation. "You're a monster," she whispered. His jaw tightened. "Maybe, but I'm the monster who keeps you alive." Before she could answer, he caught her wrist, not harshly, but firmly, a warning as much as a grip, and pulled her toward the car. Her legs resisted, but her body followed. She was trapped, caught between fury and fear, unable to break free. The door shut behind her, sealing her in. The city blurred past as the car pulled away, and Serafina realized with a sinking dread that her fight had only just begun. Because Raphael De Luca wasn't going to let her go. Not now. Not ever. The car's hum filled the silence, low and steady, but Serafina's pulse raced too fast for her to hear anything else. Raphael sat beside her, his profile carved in steel, unreadable. He didn't look at her, didn't speak. Not a glance, not a word. It was almost worse than his threats. She pressed herself against the door, staring at the blur of the city rolling past. Every street they passed was a reminder of what she was losing. Freedom, normalcy, herself. When the car finally stopped, it wasn't outside a penthouse or some gleaming tower. It was a warehouse, an old brick building with faded paint and barred windows. The kind of place that whispered of things better left unseen. Her throat tightened. "Why are we here?" Raphael finally looked at her. His eyes were calm, almost too calm. "Because you need to understand the world you're in now. Pretending you can walk away won't protect you." The door opened before she could answer, and one of his men gestured for her to step out. She hesitated, her body frozen between fight and surrender. But Raphael's quiet voice cut through her hesitation. "Serafina." Her name in his mouth was a command. Against her will, she moved. Inside, the warehouse smelled of oil and dust. Machinery lay abandoned along the walls. In the center, 3 men were on their knees, wrists bound, faces bruised. A 4th man, a stranger, paced before them with a pistol in hand. Raphael walked past her, his steps measured, his presence filling the room. The man with the gun paused, straightened, and handed the weapon to him with silent deference. "Who are they?" Serafina asked, her voice shaking. Raphael didn't answer at first. He circled the men, his eyes sharp, a predator considering prey. Then he crouched in front of one, lifting his chin with the barrel of the gun. "They're rats," he said finally. "Small ones. But even rats spread disease." The bound man whimpered, muttering in Italian, his words spilling out desperate and fast. Serafina didn't understand every phrase, but she heard the name Rossetti. Her name. Her stomach dropped. She looked at Raphael. What is he saying? Raphael's gaze flicked to her, then back to the man. He's saying your father owed money, that his debt didn't die with him, that you're the only piece left to claim. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Her father, he'd been strict, secretive, stubborn, but she had never imagined. "That's not true," she whispered. "My father wasn't. He wasn't." Raphael cut her off with a look. Cold. Sharp. "Do you think debts care about your beliefs? Whether you knew or not doesn't matter. What matters is what others think. And they think you're leverage." Her breath caught. Leverage for what? For me. The word landed heavy, the truth dawning like ice water. These men weren't after her for who she was. They were after her because she had stumbled into Raphael De Luca's orbit, and now they believed she could be used against him. The bound man spoke again, his eyes darting to her, pleading. Serafina shook her head violently. Don't look at me like that. I don't know anything." Raphael rose to his full height, towering over the man. Without hesitation, he pressed the barrel of the gun to the man's forehead. Serafina's scream tore from her throat. "Stop!" The entire warehouse froze. Even the other captives stopped breathing. Raphael didn't move, didn't blink, didn't lower the gun. Serafina stumbled forward, tears burning her eyes. "Don't do this. You can't. I can." His voice was low, unshaken. "And if I don't, others will try again. And next time, it won't be me who finds you first." Her heart hammered, terror choking her. "Then don't kill him. Just make him go. Please." The silence stretched, taut as wire. Finally, Raphael lowered the gun. Relief swept over her so hard her knees nearly buckled. He turned away, passing the weapon back to his man. His tone was flat, final. "Dump them outside the docks. Let the ocean decide if they live." The captives were dragged out, their muffled protests fading into the distance. Serafina was shaking, her arms wrapped around herself, her chest tight. "Why would you show me this?" she whispered. Raphael looked at her then, really looked, and his expression wasn't cruel. It was something far worse. Resigned. "Because, Serafina, this is your life now. Running won't save you. Pretending won't save you. If you want to live, you'll stay close to me." Her voice cracked. "And if I don't?" His eyes darkened, his words like iron. "Then the next time someone comes for you, I won't be there." The ride back was silent, but Serafina's world wasn't. Her father's secrets clawed at her mind. The men's terrified eyes haunted her, and Raphael's warning echoed, heavy and inescapable. She was no longer just a baker's daughter. She was a target, and whether she liked it or not, Raphael De Luca was the only shield she had left. The bakery smelled faintly of cinnamon and sugar, though the sweetness no longer comforted Serafina. She sat at the counter, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long since gone cold, her mind spinning. The clatter of trays in the back kitchen, the quiet chatter of employees, it all felt unreal, like the world had kept moving while hers had tilted into something darker. Raphael's words replayed endlessly. Your father owed money. His debt didn't die with him. She wanted to dismiss it, to convince herself Raphael had lied, just to tether her to him. But the way those men had looked at her, the way they spoke her father's name, it wasn't fiction. It was a truth she had been shielded from her entire life. Her father had been her rock. Stern, protective, sometimes distant, but never dishonest. At least, that's what she thought. Now, his silence felt like betrayal. Serafina? She blinked, snapping her gaze upward. Hazel, her childhood friend who sometimes helped at the shop, was standing there with concern etched on her face. You've been staring at that cup for half an hour. Are you okay? Serafina tried to smile, but it came out weak. I didn't sleep much. Hazel hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering her voice. Does this have to do with the man who came to get you last night? People are talking. They said you left with him. A flush crawled up Serafina's neck. The entire neighborhood was watching her, judging. The innocent daughter of a baker swept up in something dangerous. The thought made her chest ache. Hazel, I can't, she began, but the chime of the bakery door interrupted. The air shifted. Raphael DeLuca walked in, not dressed in his usual suits, but in a dark turtleneck and tailored coat that still carried authority. His presence devoured the room. Customers froze, whispering behind their cups, while Hazel straightened nervously. Speak of the devil, Hazel muttered under her breath. Serafina's heart lurched, anger mixing with fear. What are you doing here? She hissed, standing quickly. Checking on you, he said simply, scanning the bakery as though cataloging exits, threats, weaknesses. His gaze returned to her. After what you saw last night, you should know better than to stay alone. I'm not alone, she snapped. I have my employees, my friends. He cut her off with a dry look. They won't stop a bullet. Hazel blinked, tension flickering across her face. Okay, I'll just, check the ovens. She scurried away, leaving them standing in the middle of the shop like opposing forces. Serafina clenched her fists. You can't keep barging into my life like this. I can, Raphael said, calm as ever. And I will. Until your father's debt is resolved, you're under my protection. Her laugh was bitter. Protection? Is that what you call dragging me to a warehouse and putting a gun to someone's head in front of me? His jaw ticked, a flash of something hard in his eyes. I wanted you to see what's real, not the sugar-coated world you've built for yourself here. This is my world, she shouted, her voice cracking. Customers had begun to edge toward the door, unsettled by the rising tension. The bakery, the life I made. None of this has anything to do with you. Raphael stepped closer, his shadow stretching over her. It has everything to do with me. Do you think your father's debt collectors will stop at your shop door because you're needing dough? They'll burn this place down with you inside it. The words hit like a slap. Serafina flinched, her throat tight. Why should I believe you? She whispered. Because whether you trust me or not, they believe are mine now, Raphael said quietly. And that makes you both valuable and vulnerable. Her stomach twisted. Yours. His gaze lingered on her face, unreadable. That's what they think, which means you need to act like it. Silence stretched between them, heavy with things unspoken. Her pulse raced in her ears. You're insane if you think I'll play your game. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes, but he didn't push. Instead, he leaned in, his voice low enough only she could hear. Then you'll die refusing. I won't let that happen. She wanted to scream at him, push him, anything, but her throat locked. Because part of her feared he wasn't lying. He straightened, turning to leave, but before reaching the door, he spoke without looking back. Close the shop early tonight. I'll send someone for you. Her fists trembled at her sides. Don't bother. But deep down, she knew he would. And she knew part of her would wait. That night, she sat in her father's old study, a room she hadn't touched since his death. The desk was cluttered with papers, bills, and ledgers. Dust clung to the air, but something drove her to dig. She couldn't rely on Raphael's version of the truth. She had to find her own. Her hands shook as she opened drawer after drawer, searching for something, anything, that could explain the whispers of debt. And then she found it. A ledger bound in worn leather, tucked beneath a false panel. Her father's handwriting filled the pages, neat but hurried. Transactions, names, sums that made her blood run cold. She whispered the words as she read them. Payments, shipments. DeLuca. Her breath caught. Her father hadn't just owed money. He had been involved. Somehow, someway, her father had been tied to Raphael's family all along. The room spun. The man who terrified her, the man who claimed her father's debt, might not have been lying at all. Worse, her father might have kept her deliberately in the dark. Tears blurred her vision. She slammed the book shut, clutching it to her chest. The weight of it pressed down on her, suffocating. A knock rattled the front door. Her heart leapt. For a fleeting second, she thought it might be Hazel or a neighbor. But when she opened it, the sight waiting for her wasn't Raphael's men. It was a stranger, tall and lean, with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Miss Rossetti, his voice was smooth, but something about it curdled her stomach. Your father and I had business once. I think it's time we spoke about it. Her blood turned to ice. And as the man stepped closer, she realized Raphael's warnings weren't exaggerations. She wasn't safe in her world anymore. The predators had already found her. The stranger's shadow stretched across the entryway, his smile as thin as a blade. Serafina's first instinct was to slam the door, but his hand shot out, stopping the frame with a force that rattled the hinges. Easy, Miss Rossetti, he said smoothly, as though they were acquaintances meeting for coffee. I'm not here to hurt you. Not unless you make me. Her heart thundered. I don't know you. Leave. Oh, but you do know me. His gaze slid over her face, studying every flicker of fear. Not my face, perhaps, but my name. I was in your father's ledger, wasn't I? Antonio Vargas. He owed me, too. The name thudded in her chest. Vargas. She remembered it in shaky handwriting beside, numbers she couldn't even comprehend. Debt that stretched into the tens of thousands. You're mistaken, she whispered, clutching the door tighter, though her fingers ached. I don't think I am. His tone softened, mock gentle, like a predator coaxing prey. Your father is gone, but debts don't die. Cara mia. That means you. Her throat tightened. She thought of Raphael's words. They'll burn this place down with you inside it. And bile rose in her stomach. I have nothing for you, she said, mustering steel in her voice. So if you're looking for payment, you've come to the wrong person. Vargas's grin widened. Ah, but you're worth more than money now. You're valuable to the right buyer. Everyone knows Rafael De Luca has you under his wing, which means, darling, taking you is worth more than any ledger could promise. The blood drained from her face. Before she could react, his men emerged from the shadows of the street. 2, then 3, all dressed in dark coats, moving with silent efficiency. She stumbled back, heart hammering, realizing just how trapped she was. Then headlights cut through the darkness. A sleek black car screeched to a halt at the curb, its doors flying open before the engine even stilled. Raphael. He moved like a storm, sharp, precise, lethal. His men fanned out behind him, guns drawn, their presence filling the narrow street with sudden, suffocating tension. Vargas clicked his tongue, feigning disappointment. De Luca, always on time. Step away from her, Raphael said, his voice low and cold, a steel blade wrapped in velvet. Serafina's breath caught at the sight of him, his eyes fixed on Vargas, but his body angled subtly in front of her, shielding her without thought. Vargas chuckled, spreading his hands. I was only having conversation. With my woman? Raphael's words cracked like thunder. That conversation is over. Serafina stiffened. My woman. He was playing the part he had warned her about, the part others believed. But the way he said it, the way his voice deepened, it didn't sound like performance. Vargas tilted his head, eyes glinting. If she's yours, then she's leverage. And leverage has value. Maybe we should negotiate. Raphael's jaw flexed. You don't negotiate with vermin. He nodded once, sharp and deliberate. His men surged forward, weapons raised. Vargas's smile faltered, but he didn't retreat. Serafina's pulse roared in her ears. This was it, the kind of scene she had sworn she'd never be part of. Violence, threats, blood waiting to be spilled at her doorstep. But something inside her shifted. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She couldn't be. No, she cried, stepping between them before she even realized what she was doing. Raphael's arm shot out, catching her shoulder, but she shook him off. Her voice rang across the street, strong despite the terror clawing her chest. If you hurt him here, the whole city will know. My neighbors, the police, they'll all see the blood you spill. She looked directly at Vargas, forcing herself not to flinch. And you, if you think taking me will break him, you're wrong. I'm not your leverage. I'm nothing to you. The silence that followed was thick, everyone stunned by the force in her words. Even Raphael's hand loosened on her arm. Vargas's grin faltered into something colder. He studied her for a long beat, then laughed. Spirited little dove. He stepped back, motioning for his men to retreat. Another time, perhaps. Enjoy your evening, DeLuca. With that, he melted into the shadows, his presence lingering like smoke long after he disappeared. Serafina sagged, her knees threatening to buckle. Raphael caught her instantly, his arms steady around her. For once, she didn't push him away. You could have been killed, he hissed, anger thrumming beneath his calm. But I wasn't, she shot back, breathless, because I didn't let you turn this place into a slaughterhouse. I'm not going to stand by and watch blood soak into my doorstep. His gaze searched her face, sharp and unyielding, but something softer flickered there. Respect. You think words can save you? He asked. She swallowed hard. I think if I don't start fighting in my own way, I'll lose myself completely, and I won't let that happen. For a long moment, Raphael said nothing. Then, slowly, he released her, his expression unreadable. You're not as helpless as I thought, he murmured. Serafina lifted her chin, still trembling but refusing to drop her gaze. And you're not as untouchable as you think. Vargas came for me because of you. Don't forget that. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a scowl. Get some rest, he said finally, stepping back. Tomorrow we talk. And just like that, he was gone, leaving her alone in the doorway, clutching the ghost of his touch and the weight of her own defiance. For the first time, Serafina realized she wasn't just surviving Raphael's world. She was starting to shape her place in it. The morning light streamed weakly through the bakery windows, catching in the flour dust that lingered in the air. Serafina kneaded dough with slow, deliberate movements, the rhythm usually her comfort. Today, though, her shoulders were stiff, her mind circling the night before. Vargas's smirk, Raphael's fury, her own reckless defiance. It all haunted her like a storm cloud that hadn't passed. She had barely slept, curling in her father's study with a ledger clutched against her chest. Every page of his neat, damning handwriting screamed at her. Debt, deals, a hidden world she'd never been meant to see. He had left her with this burden, and Raphael's presence in her life was proof she couldn't outrun it. The bell over the door jingled. Hazel breezed in, scarf wrapped around her neck, carrying 2 coffees. Morning. I figured you'd need the extra caffeine after yesterday. Serafina gave a tired smile, accepting the cup. You have no idea. Hazel leaned against the counter, lowering her voice. That man, the one from last night. Was that the same man who showed up here yesterday? Serafina froze. Gossip traveled fast in the neighborhood. Hazel, you don't have to tell me everything, Hazel said gently. But I can see you're not safe. And I don't like it. The warmth of friendship tugged at Serafina's chest. She opened her mouth to answer, but the sound of an engine cut her short. A van rolled to a slow stop outside the bakery, its windows blacked out. Her stomach dropped. Hazel, go in the back, she whispered urgently. What? What? Please. Hazel hesitated only a moment before slipping behind the kitchen door. Serafina's pulse thundered as 3 men stepped out of the van. She recognized one instantly. Vargas's man. Her hand shook, but she forced herself to the door, locking it tight. Through the glass, the men spread out, one circling to the alley. Her blood turned to ice. Then, like a match struck in silence, a flash of fire bloomed at the side of the building. The scent of gasoline hit her nose, sharp and nauseating. No, she whispered. The fire licked upward, catching on crates stacked by the alley. Smoke coiled thick and black. Within seconds, the flames spread, hungry and fast. Panic surged. Hazel, she screamed, racing to the kitchen. Out the back now. Hazel stumbled out, eyes wide with terror. Together they bolted through the rear exit, coughing as smoke chased them. Outside, neighbors were already shouting, rushing with buckets, but the fire was too strong. Serafina collapsed on the curb across the street, clutching Hazel's hand as the bakery roared and cracked, flames devouring everything she had built. Her father's shelves, her recipes, the quiet mornings of rolling dough, it all crumbled in heat and smoke. Tears blurred her vision, but she couldn't look away. Serafina. The sound of her name snapped her out of the haze. Raphael's car screeched to a stop, his men pouring out. He strode toward her, eyes blazing, scanning her from head to toe for injuries. "I'm fine," she choked, though her chest was heaving. "The shop, my shop." His gaze followed hers, hardening at the sight of the inferno. For a heartbeat, his fury was so palpable she thought he might march straight into the flames. Instead, he crouched beside her, gripping her shoulders. "Did you see who?" Her voice cracked. "Vargas's men. He did this. He knew this was the only place I had left." Raphael's jaw flexed, the muscle twitching. He stood, turning to his men with lethal calm. "Find him." The command carried no room for hesitation. His men scattered instantly, disappearing into the chaos. Serafina stumbled to her feet, tears streaking her ash-dusted cheeks. "This is what I was afraid of," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Everything I loved destroyed, just to prove a point." Raphael looked at her, the firelight painting his face in shadows. "This is why I told you the bakery couldn't protect you. Vargas won't stop. He'll take and take until there's nothing left of you." Her heart broke at his words, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Hazel clutched her arm. "Sarah, come on. The fire brigade's here. We need to." "I'll take her," Raphael said sharply, his arms sliding around Serafina's waist. She stiffened, but she was too weak, too raw to fight him. The firefighters battled the flames, but the roof caved in with a deafening crash. Serafina buried her face in her hands, sobs racking her body. Raphael didn't move, didn't speak. He simply stood beside her, solid and unyielding, his hand resting lightly at her back. For the first time, she didn't push him away. Later, at his safe house, an old villa on the city's edge, stripped of grandeur but thick with security, Serafina sat in silence. Her clothes smelled of smoke. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "You don't have to stay here," she said hollowly, staring at the untouched cup of tea on the table. "I can manage." "You can't," Raphael said quietly, sitting across from her. "Not anymore. Vargas won't stop with the bakery. Next time, it'll be you." Her laugh was bitter. "You sound almost satisfied, like you wanted me to lose it, so I'd have nowhere left but you." The accusation hung heavy in the air. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "I didn't want this," he said at last, his voice rough. "But I knew it would happen. That's why I warned you." She lifted her gaze to his, anger sparking through the grief. "So what now? I'll let you lock me away like some possession? Hide while you fight my battles." His eyes burned into hers, dark and relentless. "No, you stand with me, or you die standing alone." The words landed like a stone in her chest. The bakery was gone. Her illusions of safety were gone. What remained was a choice she never wanted: surrender or survive. And deep inside, a part of her new survival might mean giving Raphael more than just her trust. Serafina woke to the sound of silence, and that was what unsettled her the most. The city had always been her lullaby, the distant rumble of trains, the honking of cars, the occasional shouts carried through the night air. Here, in Raphael's safe house, tucked beyond the reach of Vargas's men, there was nothing but stillness. She sat up on the edge of the bed, her bare feet pressing against the cool hardwood floor, and for a moment she felt like a bird in a gilded cage. Protected, yes. Safe, maybe. But free? Not at all. She moved through the kitchen, her hands restless. The cupboards were filled, the fridge stocked, and yet every jar and container was organized with clinical precision, as if someone had prepared for her arrival long before she even stepped foot here. When she reached for a pan to cook, Mateo, Raphael's right-hand man, appeared from nowhere, like a shadow trained to anticipate her every move. "You don't need to do that," he said with a polite bow of his head. "Breakfast will be brought in." Serafina forced a smile. "I wasn't asking for breakfast. I wanted to cook." His hesitation was almost comical, as though he had never seen someone like her insist on something so ordinary. "Senor Raphael prefers." "Well, I don't care what Senor Raphael prefers." She cut him off, her voice sharper than she intended. "I need to do something for myself, or I'll go mad in here." Mateo relented after a beat, stepping back, and Serafina cracked eggs into the pan. The sizzle of oil was the first sound that felt remotely normal in days, grounding her. Still, as she plated the food and sat alone at the long wooden table, the emptiness around her felt unbearable. Every wall whispered of control, his control, over even the smallest parts of her life. By the time Raphael returned that evening, she was pacing the living room, unable to shake the tightness in her chest. He walked in with that commanding presence, suit jacket over his shoulder, tie loosened, the smell of smoke and rain clinging to him. His eyes immediately narrowed at her restless steps. "You're agitated." "I'm caged," she fired back. "Do you even realize what it's like in here? Everyone does everything for me. I can't cook without someone watching. I can't leave without a guard at my side. This isn't safety, Raphael. It's prison." He dropped the jacket over the armrest, unbothered by her tone. "It's protection. Vargas burned your bakery. If you step outside unguarded, he'll burn you next. Is that what you want?" His words landed like a slap, but Serafina lifted her chin. "I want my life back. The one where I wasn't afraid. The one where I made choices without someone pulling the strings." For the first time, Raphael looked away, his jaw tightening. "There's no going back to that life. Not after him. Not after me." The silence stretched between them, sharp as broken glass. Serafina turned away, unwilling to let him see the sting of truth in her eyes. But later that night, when the house had gone quiet and the guards outside patrolled like shadows in the rain, she found him sitting alone in the study. The only light came from the fireplace, its flames dancing across his face, softening the edges of the man everyone feared. She lingered at the doorway, torn between leaving and stepping forward, until he finally spoke without looking at her. "You think I don't understand cages, but I was born in one." The softness in his voice caught her off guard. She stepped into the room slowly. "What do you mean?" Raphael leaned back in his chair, the firelight flickering in his eyes. "My father built an empire with blood. I grew up watching men kneel before him, watching others die because they didn't. By the time I was 16, I knew two things: how to shoot and how to bury secrets. Freedom." He gave a bitter laugh. "That never existed for me. Not once." Serafina crossed her arms, but the defiance had drained from her tone. "So you accepted it?" "No," he said firmly, his gaze locking with hers. "I turned the cage into a throne. But it cost me." His hand moved unconsciously to the scar along his rib cage, hidden beneath his shirt. "There was someone once. She wanted me to leave this life. I couldn't, and she paid for it with her life." The weight of his confession pulled the air from the room. For the first time, Serafina saw not the Mafia boss who commanded loyalty and fear, but a man haunted by ghosts. She stepped closer, the fire warming her skin, her voice softer now. "And you blame yourself." "Every day," he admitted. Her hand hovered above the back of his chair, hesitant, then rested gently on it. "You don't get to lock me away because of your guilt, Raphael. I'm not her." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding carved from pain and defiance. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to pull her into his orbit, but the air between them hummed with tension, fragile yet magnetic. For the first time, she didn't see him as just danger or savior. He was human, wounded, and for reasons she couldn't yet admit, she wanted to understand him more. When she finally turned to leave the study, his voice stopped her. "Serafina." She looked back. "Vargas will pay. I swear it." The promise hung heavy in the room, not just of vengeance, but of the storm yet to come. And as she returned to her room, Serafina realized that her heart was no longer untouched. Raphael had let her glimpse the cracks in his armor, and it was enough to plant a seed she wasn't ready to name. But in the shadows beyond the safe house walls, Vargas's men were already moving, tightening the noose, and neither of them knew how soon the fire would come again. The night Raphael chose to strike back was heavy with rain. Storms rolled across the city like drums of war, each crack of thunder echoing the violence to come. Serafina sat at the window of her room in the safe house, watching the downpour streak across the glass. She had grown used to the silence here, the way time stretched endlessly between the walls. But tonight was different. The house was alive with movement. Men sharpened their blades with quiet focus, guns were loaded and checked, and hushed orders passed from room to room. The air tasted of anticipation, of danger. She felt it before she saw him. Raphael, moving through the corridor, dressed in black, his presence commanding the space like a shadow cut from stone. He opened her door without knocking. For a moment, his eyes rested on her, searching, as if torn between leaving her behind and bringing her into the storm that awaited him. "You're leaving," she said softly, her throat dry. "I'm ending this," Raphael replied. His voice was calm, but beneath it pulsed the fire of a man who had waited too long to bleed his enemy. "And Vargas?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Raphael stepped closer, his gaze dark and steady. "Vargas dies tonight." Her chest tightened. She should have felt relief, even triumph, at the thought of vengeance. But instead her stomach twisted with dread. "And if you don't come back?" He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It was the gentlest touch he'd ever given her, fleeting yet enough to send her heart racing. "Then remember me, not as the monster the world paints me to be, but as the man who tried to keep you safe." She caught his wrist before he pulled away, desperate to hold onto something more than a promise of violence. "Raphael, don't turn this into just another war. You'll lose yourself." His eyes softened for only a heartbeat before the mask of steel returned. "I lost myself a long time ago. Tonight, I'm only finishing what should have ended years back." And with that, he was gone, swallowed into the night. The storm outside seemed to follow him. Serafina couldn't stay still. She paced her room, her hands trembling, torn between fear for his life and the knowledge that part of her wanted him to succeed, no matter the cost. Hours bled into one another until the sound of engines cut through the rain. She rushed to the window and saw the convoy return. Black cars rolling through the gates, headlights slicing the darkness. The first man out was Mateo, his shirt stained, his expression grim. Serafina's heart pounded as her eyes searched frantically for Raphael. When he finally emerged, blood streaked across his jaw, his shirt torn, yet he walked with the steady calm of a king returning from battle. Relief flooded her. What was laced with fear? What had he done? What had it cost? She ran to meet him in the hall, breathless, and stopped when she saw the fire in his eyes. Not triumph, not peace, but something darker, heavier. "It's done," she asked. Raphael's silence said more than words. He pulled off his gloves, dropping them carelessly onto the floor, his hands still trembling with adrenaline. Finally, he spoke. "Vargas will never touch you again." Her throat tightened. She wanted to ask how, wanted to demand details, but the truth was written on his face. The violence he had unleashed, the blood he had spilled. She reached for him without thinking, pressing her hand against his chest, feeling the rapid thunder of his heartbeat beneath her palm. "You're shaking," she whispered. His hand covered hers, his grip firm, grounding himself in her touch. "Because you're here. Because for the first time, I'm not fighting for an empire, Serafina. I was fighting for you." The confession stole her breath. She should have recoiled, should have told him she never asked for this blood-soaked devotion. But her body betrayed her. Her hand lingered against him, her gaze locking with his, and in that moment she felt the line between hate and want blur into something terrifyingly fragile. The house buzzed with celebration, men laughing, pouring drinks, clapping each other on the back. But in that quiet corner of the hallway, Serafina and Raphael stood caught in their own storm, bound by the violence of what he had done and the undeniable truth rising between them. She whispered the question she shouldn't have asked. "And now what, Raphael? With Vargas gone, what's left?" His answer was low, almost reverent. "You." For the first time, she realized this wasn't just about vengeance or protection. Raphael had tethered his heart to hers, and whether she was ready or not, she was already too deep to walk away. But outside the gates, beyond the storm's retreat, new eyes were watching, waiting. Killing Vargas had ended one war, but it had also lit the fuse for another. And neither of them knew just how close the fire was. The city was quieter after Vargas's death, but Serafina soon learned that silence could be more dangerous than gunfire. Raphael's world shifted overnight. His men celebrated victory, his enemies retreated into the shadows, and his empire grew stronger with each whisper that spread across the underworld. But Serafina knew better. Power never filled a void. It only drew bigger wolves to the scent of blood. She sat in the garden behind the safe house one morning, the autumn air crisp against her skin. The world should have felt calmer now, yet her hands trembled as she held her coffee cup. It wasn't Vargas she feared anymore. It was the man who had become her protector, her captor, and something more dangerous still, her anchor. Raphael joined her quietly, the weight of his presence pressing against her before he even spoke. He looked tired, shadows etched beneath his eyes, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked human, vulnerable. "You're avoiding me," he said simply, lowering himself into the chair across from her. "I'm thinking," she replied, her gaze fixed on the dark surface of her coffee. "About leaving?" His tone was casual, but his eyes betrayed the storm beneath. She lifted her head slowly. "Shouldn't I?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Raphael leaned back in his chair, watching her like a predator weighing its prey. But when he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost broken. "I killed for you, Serafina. Not for power, not for vengeance. For you." Her heart twisted. "And what does that make me? A woman you saved or a chain you forged for yourself?" Raphael's lips curved into the faintest smile, but there was no amusement in it. "Both." The word sliced her open. She wanted to scream at him, to walk away and reclaim the scraps of the life Vargas had stolen, but the truth was written in every glance, every breath they had shared since that night in the bakery. She was already bound to him, not by chains, but by the quiet way he looked at her when no one else was watching. "I don't belong in your world," she whispered. "No," Raphael agreed. Then he leaned forward, his eyes blazing with something that looked dangerously like devotion. "But I don't belong anywhere else without you." The confession shattered her last defense. Tears burned her eyes, and she hated herself for them, because she wasn't supposed to care. Not for him. Not for a man whose hands were drenched in blood. And yet, as he reached across the table, his rough fingers brushing hers, she didn't pull away. She clung to him like a sinner grasping at salvation. The garden faded, the silence between them filled with the hum of something far stronger than fear. In his eyes, she saw the man who had lost himself in violence, who had carried ghosts for years, and who now stood at the edge of redemption because of her. "I should run," she said, her voice breaking. "Then run," Raphael murmured, his grip tightening around her hand. "But you won't." And he was right. She didn't. By nightfall, she found herself in his room, the air heavy with the weight of their unspoken choice. Raphael stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, a king surveying his fractured kingdom. She stepped into the room quietly, but he sensed her presence, turning toward her with an expression that stripped away all his armor. "Serafina," he said, her name falling from his lips like a prayer. She crossed the space between them, her pulse racing, her body trembling. When she reached him, she looked up into his eyes, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "If I stay, Raphael, I stay on my terms. Not as your prisoner, not as your weakness, but as your equal." He studied her for a long, unbearable moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head, pressing his forehead to hers. "Then stay, not as mine to own, but as mine to love." The words broke something open inside her, and when his lips finally claimed hers, it was not a kiss of victory or possession. It was a vow, raw and desperate, forged in fire and blood. The world outside could crumble, new enemies could rise, but in that moment, Serafina knew she had stepped fully into the storm, and she would never look back. And in the shadows beyond the window, the city watched, waiting. For in the underworld, love was never an ending. It was only the beginning of another war. Hi guys, I hope you subscribed.